Right, welcome everybody to the last session of the day. My name is Sarah Toporov. I am with Headliner, based in Paris. I work on podcast audience growth and engagement. How are we feeling? Yeah? Energy? I'm a little tired, but I'm excited. But we are going to talk about quite a different kind of fatigue, I suppose, in this session, and that is news fatigue. How is that for a transition? Yes? It's okay? Good. So I am a news consumer, I think, first and foremost, in addition to kind of working in audience engagement. And I wanted to bring you this session today and these two very talented journalists because it came out of my own frustration as a news consumer in trying to follow very complex, very tragic, and very long-term international stories on conflict, on war, on just sad stuff. And I know it's important. I know as a citizen, I need to be engaged with these stories. And as a news consumer, I find it increasingly difficult. And so I wanted to bring these two very talented women here because they're doing some very human-centered journalism around these conflicts. And we have one journalist who seemingly never leaves the front lines. And we have one journalist who's never actually been to the front lines. And I hope that you'll find both of their work inspiring to keep this work going and encourage your news teams to find new ways of telling these very human stories. So first, I would like to bring up Maurine Mercier, who is a war correspondent in Ukraine for RTS, RTBF, and Radio France. Welcome her.
Thank you. And sorry, because this is my first PowerPoint presentation. And I'm very tired because I do live in Ukraine for 3 years now. And I'm just coming back from southern front line of Ukraine. So I'm very tired. Thank you so much to be here. I do live there for 3 years now. And before this, I was in Libya. So my way is to be there. I don't feel legitimate if I don't live in the country I talk about. I want to tell you about Carnet d'Ukraine. I tried to do this podcast. After 2 years, I talked to my boss and I told him, look, please, can I go to Kherson? I know it's dangerous. It's a city that is south of Ukraine. Constantly under bombings, and I wanted just to live with someone there that decided to stay in Kherson. His name is Alexei, 40 years old. Oh, thank you. Yes, better for you. And I told to my boss, let's try to go there, and each day I will send you a vocal message that you will be able to broadcast. And as my boss is crazy, he told me, yes, I trust you. So I've been to Kherson. It's very impressive. And for the first time, I allow myself to say I in my reports to make my people understand what it is like when you don't understand anything about war, just like me, when you have this chance to live in Switzerland, before all this and this comfort. What do I feel when I'm under bombings? So now I will try to use this.
Je me suis réveillée en sursaut, le ventre noué et j'entends des bruits, je me dis ok. Non, ça correspond à ce que j'ai entendu au début, c'est bon, ça m'a pas impacté. Ensuite, quand j'entends la fenêtre vibrer, je me dis ok, ça vibre de la même manière, ça passe encore. loin, mais ça passe. Et j'imagine tous les habitants qui font ce travail-là depuis plusieurs mois. Et je repense au conseil d'Alexei. La peur, c'est toi qui la manges, c'est pas elle qui doit te manger. Et je sais, d'ores et déjà, les gens parleront de cette nuit comme d'une nuit très calme. Et c'est le cas, il y aura pire, pour sûr.
So I've been doing this podcast for now 1 year, and to be really honest, it's my favorite way to report about what is happening in Ukraine. Why? Because obviously I can talk about very sad stories and all this, but I can put life, because when you have war, you have death all the time, but you have life. You have intense life, like perhaps nowhere else in this world. And I wanted to tell about life. And second example, this is Pokrovsk in eastern Ukraine, and I was there in autumn. I was there with my translator, Artyom, that became a very good friend, obviously. And we were trying to interview the people that didn't evacuated the city yet, because Russian army was at that time 7 kilometers away, and you could hear bombings all the time. And this photo, I took it, and bombing happened there just 2 hours before I took this photo. And I was trying to interview the people I could see in the street, very few people, and I met one woman for starting the conversation. We talked about war, how she couldn't sleep because of bombings, how much she needed to take medicine to try to survive, to try to sleep. But I could understand that there was something very happy. I could feel it, because I know it. I live in this country for 3 years now, and I was right. And you'll see that there was not only sadness in this interview, but a lot of unexpected life.
Tout de suite, avec cette femme, on se tutoie. Je lui dis, raconte parce que je le sens, t'es heureuse. Et là, elle me dit, je suis pas heureuse, je suis ultra heureuse. Alors oui, rien ne va dans mon pays, rien ne va dans ma ville, mais en fait, elle m'explique qu'elle découvre enfin son plaisir sexuel. Jusque-là, retenu parce que tabou, etc., etc. Et elle le découvre avec tous ces soldats qui arrivent dans sa ville. Elle éclate de rire en me disant « Jamais je n'aurais imaginé faire un truc pareil. J'ai divorcé et puis j'ai plus jamais eu d'homme ensuite. Et là, à mon âge, je suis en train de m'amuser comme une dingue. J'ai 56 ans et je m'envoie en l'air avec des petits jeunes. »
And even 20.
On est dans cette bulle, comme ça, dans cette ville qui semble à 2 doigts de se faire démolir par l'armée russe, puis envahir, et puis t'as cette explosion de vie. Elle le dit aussi, on réalise que demain, tu ne seras peut-être plus de ce monde. Alors il n'y a plus de tabou. Hier soir, on a fêté l'anniversaire d'une amie, on était dehors, devant sa porte, on a bravé le couvre-feu, on était là, entre copines, avec notre bouteille de martini, sous les missiles. On est folle.
Thank you for those two incredible women. And yeah, this is life. This is what I really wanted to report, because it's there. So we need to talk about this. This is my friend, Artyom, that was like this in front of all those women talking about sex. But he did the job. when I work in dangerous places, I work with him because he does work for the Ukrainian radio, and we love to work together. We became very friends. We laugh all the time because we need like to shower ourselves of stress and all the sadness we have to face. And I wanted in this podcast to tell the audience how we work together and how we met. And the little report you'll hear now, it's just at the very beginning. We are driving, and it's the first conversation we have. And we are trying to see what we would have to do in case of a drone would follow us and try to bomb us, because this is part of the risk in Ukraine. And he told me about his perhaps worst experience he had facing a drone. And you'll see that, again, it's very... how would I say it? You have to have this conversation. It's not easy conversation because you have to talk about risk, what could happen, but you'll see. This is life again.
Il roulait sur la route, comme là maintenant, un drone l'a attaqué et l'a bombardé. Alors il s'est jeté sur le bas-côté et puis il s'est caché dans une sorte de tuyau. Il s'est mis à chanter.
And I think to myself, that is a wonderful world.
You're crazy.
I know. Helps me really to survive it.
Ça m'a aidé à survivre à ce stress.
So I don't know anything about podcast because this is my first one, and I call this podcast le podcast pirate. Because we had no briefing, no nothing. And it's one of the reports, it's part, for RTS, it's the product that has the biggest success, talking about war in Switzerland. So it's very nice because I don't understand why, but I think that when we talk about news fatigue, I think it's not true. Perhaps it's us that just have to try to find a way to tell stories about war. People are not tired. I don't believe that people are tired. We have to find the way. I don't believe that people need short stories because I do like 8, 9, 10-minute stories and they listen to it. So I have no recommendation to do, just perhaps do it the most sincerely you can, and perhaps you'll make it like this. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to invite Caroline Gillet, an audio journalist and filmmaker from France Inter, to share. You can guess she's the one that hasn't been to the front lines. Maurine has. So please take it away.
Hey, hello everyone. So happy to be here and to meet Maurine and hear about her work. Yes, I have been working a lot about Afghanistan and I've never been there. And my podcast is called Inside Kabul. It's a 9-episode podcast that was released in August 2022, so 1 year after the Taliban arrived there. When the Taliban entered the city, I managed to reach 2 girls who were in their early 20s who spoke English, and I asked them if they could send me voice notes about how they were feeling, what they were seeing, and that's how I started getting notes from those 2 young women. One ended up staying there in Kabul, and the other one managed to escape and ended up in a refugee camp in Abu Dhabi. I think to respond to this idea of news fatigue, my podcast, or the way I ended up working, this wasn't meant to be, but it so happened that we ended up becoming very close because we went through the months that followed together. We would send each other messages every day. And I guess for me, going over this news fatigue or managing to get people involved was by telling stories of 2 people that you would get to know and start feeling like they're perhaps your sister, your cousin, or even though they're very far away from you, you might end up feeling very close to them. And so, yes, this podcast came to be, and it of course raised a lot of questions because I was doing everything from France. I was not putting myself at risk; they were, and so it raised a lot of ethical questions that I was going to have to tackle over the next 2 years. I didn't again know that at the time when we started, and then the second season came out outside Kabul because it ended up that the work we did put one of the girl who had stayed, in danger because we ended up doing an animation project with her. And even though we tried to, of course, keep her as safe as possible, we felt like her life could be at risk and that she maybe needed to leave. And so I helped her leave, which was breaking one of the number one rule you learn in journalism school. Don't do that. Don't get into people's lives, that the people you meet on the ground, you're not supposed to help them like that. You're not supposed to intervene into their lives. And so I helped her leave Afghanistan, and the other girl, also ended up leaving the camp in Abu Dhabi and arriving in France. And so we ended up actually meeting physically. And again, this raised questions about who are we to each other, what's our relationship, how do we talk about her life, and remain true to what she's going through, how do we make sure the contract with the listeners is very clear, because this is, of course, again, breaking lots of rules about journalism. So maybe to start with, I can let you listen to one of the sounds that was recorded. This is in the very first weeks when the Taliban entered Kabul, and Raha, the girl who stayed, sent me this voice note as things were closing up on her.
The fear I had at the first days of the Taliban's arrival came back to me, about my guitar especially. I've heard horrible stories about they breaking people's musical instrument and beating them at the same time. My dad told me to hand him my guitar so that he can take it somewhere else or he can break it, but I didn't accept what he asked for. I came up with an idea of removing my guitar's strings and hide it somewhere else in our house. And if they find it, I would simply tell them that it's an antique and broken guitar and it can't produce any sound. So they might not do anything with my guitar myself. So yeah. I'm starting from the top part of it and now I'm turning it. I couldn't imagine that I'm doing such a thing to a very lovely part of my life. Like, yeah. People are saying the traveling time is impossible, but I can say that it's possible. We traveled back in 21 years ago. So and the last one on both sides. There you go with dead guitar. A very, very dead guitar in a very dead country.
I like the sound because I feel like we can all relate to maybe having played music, having an instrument, and having to go through that, of course, seems unimaginable. So I guess maybe we can feel close to her at that time. As Maurine said, I guess the idea here is also to play sounds that feel perhaps not the hardest sounds, but sounds that tell us about daily life and what you have to give up in times like these. Maybe things that people don't think about. For me, doing this work with voice notes started during the lockdown. During COVID, I had been a reporter on the ground for 15 years for Radio France, and when, of course, I couldn't no longer travel for my weekly documentary show, I decided to ask people that I had met through reporting to send me voice notes. But of course, I learned as I was making all the rules about how do you make radio without actually being close to the people, without being on the ground yourself. This was very new to me, and I received lots of sounds that I started uploading on the SoundCloud platform, and then it ended up being aired. We chose small extracts that we would air on France Inter in a daily show about international news. And what I gathered from doing this work on a daily basis then was that there were some rules to put in place that I could maybe send out to everybody that I was working with. And the idea was to start by sending yourself a sound, because most people have never done radio. They're more perhaps used to image and video. And so just to send them a sound from my balcony where I was locked up myself, where I was, of course, stuck myself to show them, okay, I'm in the streets, I can hear, I can see someone walking around with a dog. Just this, suddenly they start seeing someone walking around with the dog, and they understand the strength of radio. And from then on, it was quite magical to see how they would start playing around with sound and getting really excited about how much you can do with people's imaginations, and how you can see things with your head as you're listening to sounds, things we all know about the magic of radio. I would also ask them for ambient sound, which was something not easy for them at first, and then they would start getting the hang of it. I would tell them maximum 4 to 5 minutes to keep some kind of urgency, otherwise I would end up with sounds of 30 minutes or 2 hours, and that was, of course, impossible to deal with. I would also ask them to answer these questions: what do I see? Why am I recording now? And, of course, how do I feel? And also ask them to record sounds when actions are taking place, not at night when they go home and and of course the things have passed, so the emotion is not there. The sound of the guitar is a good example of that. And also ask them individual questions, and this is something that some people are sometimes trying to reproduce this model, and it's not easy because you have to, of course, be true to each person that you're talking to, and that's Maurine just asked me to send her to take a video when she was playing the sound that you all were laughing at. I guess maybe you're aiming to send it to those women, and I think that's a good example of how you have to keep in touch with all these people. You have to, why am I here and not them? And so you have a responsibility towards them, and so this means a very personal engagement that can go on for years, and that's very different from perhaps what we do when we're on the ground for a few hours and then we leave. The war in Ukraine happened, and I ended up doing also voice notes there. I also received sounds from Kherson, and it was, again, very, very striking sounds and feeling of great proximity to all the people sending me these voice notes. And I'm not going to listen to that because we don't have time, but I hope it gives you a bit of curiosity to go and listen to the podcast. And here is, the advantages and disadvantages of voice notes. I think we can understand now that it gives a great sense of proximity. It's a bit like a diary. You don't have an intermediate, which can be interesting. Of course, the situations wouldn't be the same if I was there. Sometimes I think things are very, maybe more authentic when there's no journalist in the room. And of course, it gives access to places where I wouldn't have been perhaps able to go. For example, in Abu Dhabi, I was following this girl who was there for 7 months and sending me daily messages about life in a camp. And of course, I would never have been able, if I had been able to go to that camp, I would not have been able to stay for 7 months. The challenges, of course, is this the information being sent reliable? And of course, it raises ethical questions, and you also always have to be on call. So all these messages that I was getting, I was putting them into a Google Drive like this. So I got nearly 2,000 sounds now for Afghanistan. Sarah, you asked me to speak about the different formats that came out of this. One day, I got a message from the BBC saying, we've been listening to your Inside Kabul show, and we want to make an animation film out of it. I thought it was a joke. I was very happy to work in animation because, again, it was a possibility to add other universes onto these stories. So we worked with Afghan artist Kubra Academy, and it also, of course, enabled to preserve their security by not showing their faces. And so we worked on this film. I'm just going to show you the trailer.
En août 2021, les talibans ont repris l'Afghanistan. Ra a choisi de rester à Kaboul. Marwa a fui. Elles ont commencé à m'envoyer des notes vocales pour partager ce qu'elles vivaient. Je suis Caroline, je suis journaliste pour la radio, et voilà leurs journaux sonores.
Hello, bonjour. C'était une nuit vraiment, vraiment sombre où je me souviens que personne n'avait réussi à dormir. On a tout perdu en une nuit.
Hello Caroline, j'ai eu que quelques minutes pour préparer mes bagages et partir. Et je n'ai pu emporter que mon corps, sans mon âme.
On est tous de retour dans les années 90. C'était une de mes plus grandes peurs. Avant la prise de pouvoir par les talibans, moi, mon père, ma mère, ma sœur, on travaillait tous. Et maintenant, on est tous au chômage. Bonjour, il est 6h30 du matin. J'adore le bruit de mes pas dans la neige. C'est si beau.
J'espère qu'un jour on pourra se revoir. Mais j'en suis pas sûre. Je suis désolée, je suis trop émotive.
We also have been doing an immersive installation that will be in Avignon this summer with the innovation teams of Radio France, and it will also be in Paris, in Leipzig, in Brussels. If you guys are around, I'd love to see you there. And I just wanted to finish with the podcast and this video, even though you couldn't understand because it was in French, ended with the question, are Marwa and Raha, who were great friends in Kabul, going to meet again? And yes, they did. They ended up... See, I get very emotional when I see this image. Talks about how how all of these projects get to you, but yeah, so they reunited and they're both doing well. And actually, the whole family of Raha. This is a few days ago in Strasbourg, where the whole family of Raha has arrived, and so they all their lives have been changed by the project, and it raises again very interesting and difficult questions about what our responsibilities are and how we can work through that. Thank you.
So, here you go. So much to talk about. My first question for both of you, how do you take care of your own mental health and physical health in general?
I'm crazy. No, it's difficult. It's very difficult. I try to do my best. I'm very lucky because I'm able to cry and I'm able to laugh. And I think this is my two main tools to survive it, because it's not a lot of people will think that bombings are awful. They are awful. But as a journalist, to receive all those sad stories and to be sure, unfortunately, that you can't do anything for those people, this is very difficult to deal with. My way is to live in the country. For me, it's very difficult to spend like 10 days in Ukraine and then back to Switzerland. It's like the gap is too huge. So for me, it's strange, but it's easier to live as I do in the country. So this is one of my tools too. But it's difficult. But it's difficult because you will not say it's difficult, because I can just leave, Ukrainian people, they can't leave. When I was in Libya, people can't leave either. So it's difficult to talk about this, but I will just tell you honestly that it is difficult. Like this, you can imagine how difficult it is for Ukrainian people, for example.
So being consistently sort of present and keyed in and, yeah. And taking breaks, but not necessarily to travel. But thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And then, Caroline, you said when you were coaching people to send you voice notes, you said 45 minutes.
No. Did I say 45? I meant 5. 4 to 5.
Oh, 4 to.
No.
I was like, that is a lot. That is a lot to be dealing with. Okay, but still, 5 minutes from times thousands and thousands of folks. How do you stay good?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think I didn't realize what it would represent to actually do this work when I started it, because you don't imagine how, again, these last days I've been thinking about all the people that I interviewed for Ukraine and just sending them a message to say, hey, I'm thinking about you. They'll reply and say, oh wow, thank you so much to be like you have such a responsibility because actually getting news from someone outside who actually cares, who will listen to these stories, and so you become important in their lives. And so how do you deal with this responsibility? It can get quite intense. And I think my way was, even though I did feel like it could help for some of them to deal with how difficult the situation was to be able to speak to someone. The difficulty was that it was ongoing. Of course, it's nothing compared to what they're going through, again, as Maurine said, but the difficulty was that it was ongoing and I couldn't really make it stop. It was day and night, and I didn't really want to make it stop, of course. What I did was ask them, if you're going to send me something that's urgent, please send it now. Write to me in text so I can listen to it, but otherwise, I'll take your time when I will listen to it, and that I will, create a space to listen. And also when the women, life, liberty happened in Iran, or when the attacks happened on October 7th in Palestine, I decided that, in Israel and Palestine, I decided that I wasn't going to go for it. Some people asked me, can you maybe try again doing this work? And I thought it's going to be too much, but I can't engage with, I have all these people that I'm talking still on a daily basis. I can't have more, that I wouldn't do it well.
Boundaries, yeah. Do you have two separate devices? No, everything's coming to the same. Yeah. When I send you a WhatsApp, everyone's sending you the same WhatsApp, like the same. Yes. Everyone, your family, work.
Yes.
Okay. Someone from Radio France here, like maybe get this girl a separate phone. Okay. No, that's it. No, it's important. It's important to take into account.
No, and Maurine was telling me that she sometimes has, like, maybe you go and see professionals to help you deal with all of this, but you have to pay for it yourself as well. This also, I think, is interesting about what it says.
Yeah, my media pay a little bit, but I have to do more because, I've been doing this for 10 years. Libya, then Ukraine, and I do keep contact with everyone I interviewed in Libya. I receive messages from Libyans, guys, and I'm in Ukraine now. And I want to keep this because I don't want to be the one that will have an interview and then run away.
Yeah.
So to feel comfortable, I need to be there. It's a lot of work, but it's life too. I think it's humanity.
Yeah.
Couldn't do in another way.
It's interesting to bring that up because you sort of touched on it. Is how do you navigate, I guess, that relationship between yourself and your sources? Are there lines that you will not cross? Are there lines that you said that you would not cross, and then you did cross them? How do you navigate that? Because it's not always super clear.
Life is not clear. No, of course you have to cross the line a little bit all the time. But for me, I would say that security is something very important. I have been the last 2 weeks in Kherson. Kherson could be occupied in a few months. This can happen. So you have to think about it. You get an interview. Someone can be under occupation in a few months. So you have to take care of the people. I change the name all the time. I'm very happy to work for radio more than I do a bit of television, but as less as I can for security to protect those people. So security and trauma, I would say too. If you meet someone and this someone would tell you about being raped, for example, in Bucha, this happened to me. I will not broadcast the interview the day after. I will tell the woman, you can decide, of course, and you take your time. And I broadcasted the interview perhaps more than 2 weeks later, because I was, I needed to be sure she was okay. And how can you be okay when you are 24 hours after liberation? It's impossible. PTSD. So I try to. This is my limit. To time and security.
Yeah, same here. Security, of course. How do you do it when you're not there? And I think, actually, one woman was talking to me from Kherson as well, and she was actually, for some reason, this was when Kherson was occupied by the Russians, and she actually some military people came into her apartment for a stupid reason, too long to explain, but nothing to do with the war. And they looked in her phone, and they could see that she had been in contact with international media. And so she wrote to me, and I was one of these media, and so we spent the whole night talking to each other, putting her in contact with organizations, but there were not so many organizations left in Kherson at the time. And then she managed to flee, but for 10 days I didn't know where she was. I didn't know if she was alive, and that was horrendous. And so I think from then on, I think my approach to this kind of work changed, obviously, on just always putting security first and foremost. It raises a question about paying as well, which is another rule in journalism school, of course. You don't pay people if you, for so many reasons that I don't know if we need to get into, but that are quite clear. And so here as well, the question was raised for me because I did feel that for these people, for Marwa and Raha, for example, talking to me, having to think about doing these voice notes, it represented a mental strain, perhaps, to have to remember, and also it felt like, for example, in Kherson, I was happy I did because she actually managed to flee the city because of that money, because she was able to pay people to help her out. I mean, all these lines are super blurry. These are discussions that I keep having with myself, and I felt that the way to deal with it was perhaps to be very transparent in my podcast and to explain all of this ordeal that we go through, all these questions we go through as journalists and how to navigate.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you maybe give a couple really practical tips on process in terms of that security? Are you using encryption? Are you ever disguising voices? I think you mentioned you have folks delete everything that they've sent. Could you?
Yeah, exactly. Delete everything. Not use WhatsApp. Change their names. Change my name. In Afghanistan, they didn't go out with their phones, and I was really insistent on that. And again, it's so hard because you're away and you're like, please don't go out with your phone, please, this is so dangerous, but they're the ones who know the field, but they're also in their 20s. How do you, it's so tricky. Yes, I was going to say something else that I forgot.
Process encryption, changing voices.
Yeah, we changed their voices, we changed their names. And also, yes, I didn't do it in Iran because I felt like it was too dangerous. In Afghanistan, the Taliban don't have the technological resources to do the same kind of tracking that they would do in Iran. So that was also something that I decided not to do.
What about security procedures that you use with your sources?
I think it's very difficult to anticipate. And sometimes a neighbor can be the threat. And you don't see this threat. So for me it's very difficult, honestly, I should be used to it, but my experience is that it's, you'll see danger here, it will be there. So you have to try to be sure that this someone is, it's horrible to say it like this, but is considering the fact that he or she could have problems. She could die for just testify. And this is her or his decision. But to see the danger, it's very difficult. I learned that it's impossible, at least for me.
Yeah, for me that was also an important step in building a relationship with Marwa and Raha, was to encourage them to be, the day they finally said no to something I suggested, and then I felt like I felt so much better then, and I felt like that we had stronger relationship. But of course, just knowing they might not feel comfortable saying no to something is obviously terrifying. And so, all of how do you build a relationship where this is possible, especially if they're younger?
Yeah, no, that's a good example of a moment of trust. Okay, no, that's too far. Not today.
Exactly.
Yeah, very good.
And these questions I don't want to answer. Oh, great, thank you. I'm so happy.
I found the line, I found
yes,
it.
Yes,
okay,
exactly.
good. What are your questions for these journalists? If we could throw a hand up and we can get a mic over here. Microphone, is anyone? I'll give you my microphone.
I can speak up. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a question. Besides security and traumatic notions that audio brings to you versus video, are there any other benefits when you use a microphone, in particular for Maurine, in your daily life? Do you see a way that audio has an advantage compared to video in regards to the storytelling, in regards to the narration?
I work for TV because I have to, because part of my work I do it as freelance. Basically, I need to be paid. Television it means more money than radio. This is the only advantage, to be really honest. I can see the difference. If I feel someone in Ukraine, this someone will never tell me the same that he would say in radio to a simple microphone. So I do as less television as I can. It's very different. It's the opposite. I'm very happy to. I wouldn't work for any other media but radio in war zone.
This is another reason I wanted to bring this topic to Radio Days, because it's a very power of audio topic, for sure. Let's have one last question if we have one from the audience. Yeah.
Thank you. So for Caroline, I was wondering, so I was putting myself in your shoes and I was, okay, I'm getting all these voice notes, all these stories. So what do you do to fact check when it comes to this kind of, like, you have zero access to their zone? Because you're also sharing this with so many people around the world and you want the information to be good.
Sure. I was actually thinking, I didn't talk about that. It's of course, a very important point. I think what's important for me, I'm not sure I would do it if I wasn't linked to Radio France and knowing that on the side there are journalists doing the field work and looking for information and doing that job that Maurine and colleagues are doing. Of course, I verify what I can verify, but a lot of it is just people telling me what they're feeling, so it's not so verifiable. And I do feel like this work is also, it can find its place next to information again. So yes, and I think it's interesting because of course, the first radio was in studios, and the people who were getting to go into the studios were professional speakers. Then we started having microphones to go outside on the field, and that's when we started in the 60s to interview people on the streets, and it raised new questions about what are the rules with interviewing people who are non-professionals, especially during documentary, because in journalism you have rules like don't pay your sources, etc. But in documentary you don't have these rules. Everyone has to make up their own rules about where they draw the line. And of course, each time it's interesting because these technological evolutions bring new questions. So now we don't even have a microphone anymore. It's a phone that's in someone's pocket at the other end of the world. And it raises, again, totally new questions. And we're dealing with them now. I think we haven't answered them totally. What I try to do is check what I can, and then I talk in the first person. I make sure everybody understands that this is documentary rather than information, and I hope that's clear, and that enables these words, these emotions to be heard in that particular context. They only speak for themselves, and of course I remove things that are irrelevant because that's things you can hear from information.
Thank you all very much. I would encourage you to come and speak to our journalists afterwards. That's all we have time for. And thank you. Yeah, thank you, Maurine. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you so much.
Please give them a last round of applause.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we'll see you at the party tonight. Don't forget to rate the session and swap card. Thanks.
Thank you very much.